Already the world's biggest coal consumer is China, about to expand its use even further. As the year comes to a close, investors are keeping a close watch on the oil markets and what the future might hold. And diesel fuel spills into Alaska's Prince William Sound as a tugboat hits the same reef that claimed the Exxon Valdez 20 years ago.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
Amid all the talk about nations turning to renewable energy, a new forecast says China's demand for coal is set to rise 4 to 6% next year. China's already the world's biggest producer and consumer of coal, using it to operate about 80% of its power plants. China Securities Journal is pointing to a forecast from the China National Coal Association saying demand for coal from the world's second biggest energy user could expand to 3.4 billion metric tons thanks to the country's surging economy. The estimate says China's energy demand overall may rise 3.6% next year. Meantime, a pair of coal mine explosions in China killed more than a dozen people over the weekend. State media report that 12 of the miners were killed in northern China's Shaanxi province when a pocket of gas ignited. To the south, 11 miners were trapped after a gas explosion. China's mining industry is said to be the world's deadliest, with the most accidents blamed on poor safety practices. Well, China says it's going to start building natural gas storage facilities around the country next year. The government says it wants to avoid a recurrence of last winter's big supply shortages. A cold spell across northern and central China in the last few weeks has reduced supplies of natural gas to some cities in China, and that's affected transportation, industrial production, and homeowners. The head of the National Administration of Energy in China says natural gas consumption is expanding fast while reserves lag far behind. And oil begins the last week of the year largely flat. It's hovering right now around $78 a barrel in overseas trading, but experts say that prices could push through $80 later this week when inventory numbers are set to be released. Last week's report showed a drawdown of 5 million barrels. If that drop continues, possibly indicating rising demand, crude prices could see an uptick. And checking on early prices today, oil right now is at $78.47 a barrel. It's up 42 cents. And natural gas up 20 cents to $5.84 per thousand cubic feet. This as natural gas stockpile levels fell less than expected last week. The DOE's Energy Information Administration said in its weekly report that natural gas inventories fell 166 billion cubic feet, down to about 3.4 trillion cubic feet. Platt says analysts had expected the drop to be between 171 billion and 175 billion cubic feet. The inventory level was 13.1% above the 5-year average of about 3 trillion cubic feet, 11.8% above last year's storage level of just over 3 trillion cubic feet. It was a messy Christmas for rescuers trying to free a tugboat stuck and leaking fuel into Prince William Sound. It got caught on the same reef that damaged the Exxon Valdez 20 years ago. The Coast Guard has been working to transfer 33,000 gallons of diesel fuel from the tugboat. Efforts were slowed down over the weekend when a mile-long diesel sheen spread across the Sound. It had been leaking from fuel tanks. The Coast Guard says that a dive team inspecting the tug found damage to the hull and a section of keel missing. The boat is part of the Ship Escort Response Vessel system that was created after the Exxon Valdez ran aground back in 1989. Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin said today he inaugurated the country's new Siberian oil terminal that will export crude oil to Asia. At a ceremony this morning, Putin pushed a button that initiated the first filling of an oil tanker at a terminal near the Pacific port of Nakhatka. Earlier this year, Russian oil pipeline monopoly Transneft completed construction of the first 1,600-mile section of the oil pipeline through eastern Siberia. For now, oil is being delivered by rail to the port, where it's then pumped into tankers for shipment to markets in Asia. A South Korean consortium wins a $20 billion deal to build the first nuclear reactors in the UAE. United Arab Emirates state-run nuclear energy company says this group, that is led by Korea Electric Power, won the contract to build 4 reactors, 1,400 megawatts, for Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation. The bid beat out proposals from France, the U.S., and from Japan. The UAE is the world's 3rd biggest oil exporter, but has to import natural gas to run a lot of its existing power plants. It says its energy needs are expected to nearly double by the year 2020. New York State has settled a major lawsuit with 3 natural gas companies that have argued the state could not auction carbon allowances under a major Northeast initiative to cut emissions. Under the deal, the state has agreed to pay $7.7 million to cover the cost of carbon allowances for Indec Corinth, Selkirk Cogan Partners, and Brooklyn Navy Yard Cogen Partners. New York joined the 10-state regional greenhouse gas initiative, the RGGI, in 2008. RGGI is the nation's first cap-and-trade system in operation designed to force down carbon emissions. It requires utilities to buy allowances to pollute. In their suit against the state, the natural gas companies argued they have long-term contracts to sell electricity to Con Ed, which makes it difficult for them to raise their prices to make up for the added expense of buying allowances. DOE is dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into so-called energy innovation hubs, a mission of Energy Secretary Steven Chu to try to bring new energy technologies out of the labs and into the market. Chu says DOE will pour $366 million over 4 years into its 3 new research and development centers, or hubs. He wants them to focus on 3 areas: producing fuels from sunlight, improving energy-efficient buildings and computer modeling, and simulation to develop advanced nuclear reactors. Chu says he wants basic science to overcome hurdles to enter the market and wants more investors to see the commercial viability of new technologies. The end goal is to create 8 hubs, a lot like the ones that were created under the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb. Chu's plan has been a controversial one. Congress has been unwilling to fund the hubs at the levels that Chu requested. The secretary asked for $280 million for fiscal 2010 in the budget request to develop these 8 hubs. When completed, GE says it will be the largest wind farm operation around the globe. The company has won a $1.4 billion contract from Caithness Energy to build turbines for an 845 megawatt wind farm near Arlington, Oregon. Construction of the Shepherd's Flat project will start in 2011 with 338 turbines expected to generate about 2 billion kilowatt hours per year to Southern California Edison. As more businesses turn to renewable sources of energy, more U.S. colleges are turning to renewable courses on energy. The Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education says more than 100 majors, minors, and certificates were created this year in energy at universities, up from just 3 programs back in 2005. Executive Director Paul Rowland says students want the courses and employers want the trained students. Illinois State University now has 65 majors in renewable energy, thanks in part to a $1 million DOE grant. MIT now has a minor in energy studies, and in Ohio, the University of Dayton and Wright State University are launching energy master's degree programs. Here's a check of what's going on under Clean Skies News coverage today. Incandescent light bulbs are going off the shelves by 2014. Energy experts say their replacement LEDs could pose some challenges. Dee Bombani will have more on that on the Energy Report at 4 p.m. That is the Energy Report for now. Thanks for joining us here in the Energy News Center. For any suggestions or comments about our programming on Clean Skies News, we'd like to hear from you. You can email us at contact@cleanskies.com, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Susan McGinnis. This is Clean Skies News.